Well, welcome to Musings from the Global Leadership Summit. As I've said, the Leadership Summit this year had record attendance. And even on the main campus where I was at, there was over 9,000 people. And over time, it looks like they'll have over 400,000 people at all the campuses. But each of the talks that were delivered had their own unique message. And this particular, I want to talk about the insights from inside Google from Laszlo Bock. And this gentleman had a very powerful message talking about what are the things that transform your life and your leadership. And what was fun for me, even when I heard this one, is after serving on the staff at both Willow Creek and Saddleback, at times I've been thinking about threatening to write a book called Willowback, and it's lessons on life and leadership in two of America's largest churches. Ultimately, what we spend a lot of our time and work on is the topic of leadership, but I love how Laszlo went over what are the things about life as well, those things that really matter. The things that at Willow Creek that made a difference in my life were highly personal. You know, things like going there, I was ready to jump into a type A, kind of a culture and just drop the clutch and go for it, with Bill being a take the hill kind of a guy. When I got there, though, I realized the engine inside me was going a little faster than it probably should have. And as a result, jumped into some personal counseling that over a couple of year period worked through a little of the motivations and some of the, bruises and bumps along the way, the things that, God needed to work in and through me, or to me in a sense, before he could work through me. And I'm very grateful for Bill and for the culture to be able to care about not just my leadership, but my life and the things that mattered for my family, et cetera. This is a huge thing on one of the lessons. Laszlo talked a little bit about his background, being an HR guy with Google and having the responsibility to find people, to grow people, and to ultimately keep people. And that season led him to go in and start another startup. But ultimately in that, he learned some things that ultimately we spend so much time of our life at work, it better have meaning. It better have something of value beyond the doors of the ministry or the organization or whatever. And for me, I remember working in the marketplace up in Silicon Valley and had just a great run servicing. Actually, Apple was the number one customer of this company that I worked for. We made the first hard drive for an Apple II computer, the first one, the old first box, the old floppy disk drive. And just had an amazing run developing the drive, and then we figured out how to share multiple Apples to this drive and share a printer, et cetera, and one thing went to another, and this couple $100 million company came out of nowhere in Silicon Valley. And like a lot of them, it kind of went away. But before it did, I just had like a 25-year career in 5 years at that place. But ultimately, I loved what I did, never thought that I would leave. But at one point during my tenure there, my wife and I had been married for about 5 years, had our first daughter, and our daughter, Kirsten, had a really unusual, medical, challenge and never made it out of the hospital after 4 months. All I could think of in the dark of the night is, what do I want to do? I want to make sure that what I'm doing has meaning. And when I listened to this, I just was reminded, I got to do what really brings me great joy but makes a difference. And I walked into the president's office, didn't have another job or anything, and just said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't do this. He looked at me and said, what do you want, more money or what is it? And I said, no, but I probably should have called a little earlier to do that. And ultimately what happened is I went down to Southern California, and my wife and I enrolled at seminary. Again, I didn't know exactly what to do, but I figured that might be a pathway. And at the Disneyland Hotel one day at a church leader conference, I met Bill Hybels. And Bill Hybels was given a message about spiritual gifts, which became the network resource that he did. And the way that he talked about it from his father's business that he and his family kind of were in the produce business, and then his heart for the local church and the marriage of those things, I think I just responded to that business side with this church side and felt like there was something in it. And afterwards, I followed him back to this hotel room like a voyeuristic kind of a weirdo. And I said, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. And he said, well, we're doing an internship and you might want to check it out. The internship was designed to be able to learn about Willow Creek Community Church with a goal of wanting to plant a church similar to it to make a difference, to have meaning in the kingdom. And so I said, all right. And I left our, what was beautiful home on the beach and got a 1-bedroom place in Streamwood, Illinois. And I jumped in with all of the old school guys that are there now. And I had an amazing run learning about the life, work, and ministry of Willow Creek with the hopes of going and planting a Willow-style church. Well, ultimately, my journey continued on after staying on staff with Bill for 6 years, championing the small group stuff. But I had unbelievable meetings. Sometimes people will say, Bob Buford's book, Halftime, is, looking for, from success to significance. A pastor friend of mine said, I'm just looking for moving from significance to success. But the bottom line is having something you can get up in the morning and stay in the morning. I really resonated with what this guy was talking about and just rang true that ultimately we need in our culture, in our churches and our organizations, create things that actually give our people meaning. He said ultimately that everybody is pretty much the same. We all have the same desire for that they need to value, that need to feel valued, recognized and loved, and that their contribution matters. 1, 2, that they have a sense of that they have a voice, that what they say makes a difference, that when they're contributing, it actually has something that is listened to and willing to be integrated, to be able to give people value, to be able to give them a voice, are two pieces that he kind of talked about. And whether you are an entry-level person or you're an executive and everybody in between, I think I confessed at times that I haven't always been able to do that. I think my idea is better, and so it's like, take my idea versus your idea. You're just here to be able to execute on my idea. And I think it's easy for us as church leaders to sometimes get into a mode like that. We forget what we need to do and to bring meaning and value to people's lives. What he went on to say was that if you treat people right, ultimately, they will do great things for you. And I look back on my life, my ministry at Willow, and I think, did I? Okay, I'd like to believe the difference that we made a difference. But there's no question I would have gone to the mat while I was there for the work that I did at Willow. Even to this day, when I was just out at the Leadership Summit, they asked if I'd help think about some of the things they're doing this fall, doing a fall campaign and putting together resources like we do at Life Together, like I did with Rick here, actually in Rick's studio right here now as I'm putting this together, using this as an opportunity to have the sacred opportunity to help, not to take anything from it, as I haven't, as I volunteered to go back and help develop the Wiser Together campaign a number of years ago and work with the team to do the Praying Together campaign. But, now even yet again, it just brings great joy. Someone asked me today, what was it about your trip that you just loved? And I said, it's sacred being in that place and significant being able to make a difference. But people will go to the map. I think I look back, though, there's a couple of moments that were so significant. My wife and I ended up a set of we had 2 kids going into Willow Creek that were healthy after we lost our daughter, Kirsten, and 3 that were a set of triplet girls that were born in Chicago. So we didn't go plant that church right away. But 2 of them had special needs, and one of them was in a wheelchair. And early on when they were born, Bill and Nancy Beach and Don, because all those guys, they did a testimony. They did a video medley of our story because it was quite remarkable to see these kids, us trying to survive and talking real honestly about my wife got a little angry at God and I got a little, just tender with it. And they captured that story over about 3 weeks and played it on a weekend that Bill did on a series called God is Our Refuge. And we were kind of the testimony for it instead of a drama. But I remember we needed to figure out how to get a special needs van, car, to transport our huge little Beverly Hillbillies family. And Bill and the elders decided to go ahead and help us. And I didn't know what was going on, but the elders called me and wanted me to meet in the middle of the atrium out there. And I sat down, and I thought I was actually going to get chastised for something that I did. And Lori Peterson said, Brett, we want to let you know that we are grateful for, the difference that you've made, the impact that you're having, your faithfulness to service, just really nice things. And she said, as a result, and she took an envelope and slid it across the table and gave it to me. She said, as a result, we want to give you this gift. And I thought, okay. When I was in the marketplace, you'd get thank yous like this once in a while, but this was different. And I opened up the envelope and I looked inside, and it was a check for $10,000 to buy a special needs van lift. The lift for the van we bought was almost $10,000 so that my daughter could bring her wheelchair up and down. Okay, now that kind of stuff is very endearing to anybody, right? And it was so powerful for me and my wife, and ultimately Megan, who is now 24. The triplets just turned 24, and it was fun when Bill came out to speak at Saddleback not long ago. It was so powerful because he came out and saw my kids and hadn't seen them for a long time. It was so neat for me to be able to even play a part in bringing him out and have him teach the walk across the room message and us launch what were 200 groups off of his curriculum, and 2,000 people went through the curriculum. But to have him come out and my kids smile and him look at them, and they were born right in that town, right down the street, and how they served us and honored us. The gift of being able to take care of your people and how loyal they would be, Bill, and hopefully they felt that as Rick does. The last thing on this particular one I want to kind of, just do some musings on is the thing that he closed in. He said, you got to hire people better than you. Everybody knows that. Compliment you, et cetera. Take the risk of hiring someone. And I can remember one time in my life that I'll never forget, and when I did it and how it felt as a result. I was on staff, and the small group model at Willow went really well. We had just a great run, went from a couple hundred people in groups to over 12,000 people in groups. And we weren't using curriculum or anything. It was really a model that well paid for itself. We put 200 people in groups and then 200 people not in groups. And the data on these two things relative to the giving was exponential. So myself, Greg Hawkins, got a chance to present that to the board at Willow, the 30 people that basically ran all of Chicagoland. It was just such a strong team. But at the end of that, they gave us a gift, a financial gift to hire staff. And so the gift was a unique amount. It was $1 million. And the design was to be able to take and hire 10 people, $50,000 a piece. Didn't seem like a lot then, but to take somebody across the country and hire them at Willow Creek where they could get that kind of training, a lot of people wanted to do that. And we fully loaded the salary with being able to have benefits on there, as well as a laptop, et cetera, because the model we were doing was the meta-church model and was designed to be able to have you, if you can get another 200, 400 people, it clearly pays for itself. So we just went into basically, running an HR firm, kind of like this guy. He was doing HR on Google. I basically felt like I had 5, 6 people that were hiring people. I had a theological expert, a family, therapist, a leader kind of guys that helped do these interviews because we were looking to hire people. So Carl George launched the model for us and of what was this. And so we were kind of thinking, all right, how do we find the people? And Carl said, don't hire them from outside, hire them from inside. Get Willow blood, Willow, kind of our gray color. And so we basically started hiring from within. But I felt like I needed to get a couple of people from the outside. And I hired this one guy named John Burke. And John Burke was a great young guy. He was on the campus of Campus Crusade for Christ in Santa Barbara. I brought him in, and our goal was to be able to train him, was to be able to have him go ahead and lead an area ministry. And I told him he had teaching gifts, and I said, you can't teach for 2 years. And all you're going to do is lead. And the area you're going to lead is in the food court. In that food court at Willow, you had all those people packed in there. And it was a lot of gray hair people that were serving, volunteering. There was like 600 volunteers. And his job was to care for those people and bring a caring dimension to the serving dimension. We called them serving groups. And so I was kind of responsible for the adult side of the ministry. And this was one area that I had for a season. John said yes, came out with his bride and his 2 kids. And he sat down in the basement in the food service, had a big pole right next to him, and it's ridiculous what he said yes to. Amazing, gifted guy. One thing led to another. He liked sailing, bumped into Bill. Bill liked him and had just a great affinity with him because he was a super strong leader and a teacher, and I had him reporting to me. Well, during that season, he had gifts stronger than me, and I knew that he was a young guy that had great potential. One thing leads to another. He's teaching on the weekend service, and he is leading. And then I'm in a meeting with the goal of trying to figure out how we staff this next thing. And the call was that he was going to move from working for me reporting to him. Wow. I had a guy that I knew had great potential. I didn't know what it would look like. When that happened, though, I felt both humbled and hurt. But I listened and I look back and I see what God did because he stayed for a number of years at Willow. But he planted a church in Austin, Texas. And that church is now 7,000 strong. And he wrote a book called No Perfect People became a church leader book that everyone is looking at. And he started GLS, not GLS, but he started this ministry that was designed to raise up emerging leaders. He was an unbelievable leader. I would do it again now, knowing what I know and how I look to try to get people that are stronger than me, if I can afford them, to be able to come alongside, as we've done in our ministry. Working with churches all around the country, it's always scary for some succession questions to other kinds of questions, but you got to hire better if you can afford them. But figure out how you can afford them. It's better to do that than chisel it up. Anyway, those are just a few of the musings on this particular message. The Global Leadership Summit will be back and sharing more as the weeks and days come.